Dr. Richard Caldwell held the small bottle between his fingers and smiled. The baby in front of him was perfectly healthy. His eyes responded to light. His pupils dilated normally. There was nothing wrong with this child. But Caldwell squeezed 2 drops into each eye anyway. "Congenital blindness," he said calmly, writing on his clipboard. "Zero light perception. Irreversible." The father collapsed into a chair, his face white with shock. His wife had died 3 months ago. Now his son was blind. Caldwell pocketed the prescription pad. Another patient. Another monthly payment. Another child who would never see because of him. But he didn't know that 8 months later a maid would give this baby a bath, and everything he had built would come crashing down. Before we continue with this incredible story, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We want to know how far this story travels, so comment below and tell us which city you're watching from. Now let's continue. Marcus Sterling grabbed his phone and threw it against the wall. "Useless!" he shouted. "Every single one of them is useless." The phone shattered into pieces, scattering across the marble floor. Harold the butler stood motionless by the door, waiting for the storm to pass. "Sir, perhaps you should rest. You haven't slept in 3 days." "How can I sleep, Harold?" Marcus spun around, his eyes red and wild. "How can I sleep when my son is lying in that room, blind, unresponsive, completely cut off from the world?" Harold said nothing. He had learned long ago that silence was the safest response when Marcus was like this. Marcus walked to the window and pressed his forehead against the cold glass. Outside, the sun was setting over Beverly Hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. His son would never see those colors. His son would never see anything. "Elena would have known what to do," Marcus whispered. "She always knew what to do." "Mrs. Sterling was an exceptional woman, sir." Marcus turned sharply. "Don't talk about her in the past tense." "My apologies, sir." Marcus closed his eyes and saw his wife's face. 3 months after Noah was born, she had kissed him goodbye and boarded a helicopter to a charity event in San Francisco. 4 hours later, he received a phone call that destroyed his world. The helicopter had crashed. There were no survivors. The wreckage burned for hours before rescue teams could reach it. Marcus never got to say goodbye. He never got to hold her one last time. He never got to tell her that their son had been diagnosed with permanent blindness just 2 weeks before her death. "The new housekeeper arrived, sir," Harold said, breaking the silence. Marcus didn't turn around. "I don't care about housekeepers. You instructed me to hire additional staff. The mansion requires maintenance and the current team is insufficient." "Fine. Do whatever you need to do. Just keep her away from Noah." "Of course, sir." Harold turned to leave, but Marcus stopped him. "Harold." "Yes, sir." "Did you give Noah his drops today?" Harold's face remained expressionless. "Yes, sir, at 10 o'clock and again at 4 o'clock, as Dr. Caldwell prescribed." "And there was no change, no reaction?" "None, sir. The child remains unresponsive." Marcus's shoulders slumped. "You can go." Harold nodded and walked out, closing the door softly behind him. But instead of heading downstairs, he stepped into the hallway bathroom and pulled out his phone. He dialed a number he had memorized months ago. "It's me," he said quietly. "Sterling is getting worse. He's starting to ask more questions about the drops." The voice on the other end was calm, measured. "Is he suspicious?" "Not yet, but he's desperate. Desperate men do unpredictable things. Keep administering the medication. Double the dose if necessary." Harold hesitated. "The child is already showing no response whatsoever. If we increase the dosage..." "Do as you're told. You're being paid very well for your cooperation." The line went dead. Harold stared at the phone for a long moment. Then he slipped it back into his pocket and walked downstairs to greet the new housekeeper. Ciao. Grace Turner stood in the foyer, clutching her small bag with both hands. She had traveled for 6 hours to get here, a bus from Sacramento to Los Angeles, then a taxi to Beverly Hills. She had spent her last $40 on that taxi ride, hoping that the job listing she had found online was real. Live-in housekeeper needed at private estate, no experience required, room and board included. It sounded too good to be true. But Grace had nothing left to lose. 6 months ago, her baby had died. Daniel, her beautiful boy. He was 3 months old when she put him to bed one night, and he never woke up. The doctors called it SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, a medical term that meant absolutely nothing. Her son was dead, and no one could tell her why. After the funeral, Grace fell apart. She stopped eating, she stopped sleeping, she stopped answering her phone. Her landlord evicted her, her boss fired her, her friends stopped calling. She had nothing left. No home, no job, no family, no reason to keep living. Then she saw the job listing and something inside her sparked. Not hope exactly. More like survival instinct. A desperate need to be somewhere else, anywhere else, far away from the memories that haunted her every night. Now she was here standing in a mansion that felt like a tomb. You are Grace Turner. She looked up. A tall man in a black suit was walking toward her. His face was completely expressionless, like a mask carved from stone. "Yes," she said. "I'm here about the housekeeper position." "I am Harold, the head butler. Follow me." He turned and walked away without waiting for her response. Grace hurried to catch up her worn shoes, squeaking on the polished marble floor. "The mansion has 47 rooms," Harold said as they walked. "You will be responsible for cleaning the east wing and the common areas on the ground floor. You will not enter the west wing without permission. You will not disturb Mr. Sterling when he isn't in his office, and you will not interact with the child." Grace's heart skipped. "There's a child here." Harold stopped walking. He turned to face her, and for just a moment something flickered in his cold eyes, something that looked almost like warning. "Mr. Sterling's son, Noah. He is 8 months old. He was born blind. He does not respond to sound, touch, or movement. Do not attempt to engage with him. It is a waste of time." Grace felt something twist in her stomach. What happened to his mother? She died. Helicopter crash, 3 months after the birth. Grace closed her eyes. She thought of Daniel. She thought of the empty crib in her old apartment. She thought of the tiny casket at the funeral. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Harold studied her for a moment. "Your room is on the 3rd floor. You will begin work tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Breakfast is served in the kitchen at 5:30. Do not be late." He handed her a key and walked away. Grace stood alone in the hallway listening to the silence. This house felt wrong. Everything about it felt wrong. The cold walls, the empty rooms, the butler who spoke about a blind baby like he was discussing furniture. But she had nowhere else to go. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor and found her room. It was small and plain, with a narrow bed, a wooden closet, and a single window overlooking the back garden. She sat on the bed and pulled out her phone. No messages, no missed calls. No one in the world knew where she was, and no one cared. "This is my life now," she said to herself. Cleaning a rich man's house, staying invisible, surviving. She lay back on the bed and closed her eyes, but she couldn't sleep. Something about this place was keeping her awake. Something about the blind baby in the West Wing. She didn't know it yet, but that baby was going to change everything. The next morning, Grace woke at 5 o'clock. She dressed quickly, splashed water on her face, and headed down to the kitchen. 2 other staff members were already there, a cook named Rosa and a groundskeeper named Miguel. They nodded at her, but didn't speak. Grace ate her breakfast in silence, watching the clock. At exactly 6 o'clock, Harold appeared in the doorway. "Turner, you will start in the living room, dust the furniture, organize the shelves. There are baby toys scattered on the floor. Place them in the basket by the window." "Baby toys?" Grace asked. Harold's jaw tightened. "Mr. Sterling insists on keeping them out. He believes the child will respond eventually." "But you said he's blind." "He is blind, completely and permanently, but Mr. Sterling refuses to accept it." Grace nodded and walked toward the living room. She found it easily enough. It was a large space with high ceilings and tall windows that let in the morning light. The furniture was expensive but cold. The walls were bare. There were no photographs, no paintings, no signs of life. But in the center of the room, on a soft playmat, sat a baby. Grace stopped in the doorway. Noah Sterling was smaller than she expected. He had dark hair like his father and pale skin that seemed almost translucent. His eyes were open, staring straight ahead, seeing nothing. He held a small toy car in one hand, but he wasn't playing with it. He wasn't doing anything. He just sat there perfectly still like a doll that someone had forgotten to put away. Grace felt her heart crack. She had seen babies before. She had held her own son for 3 months before he was taken from her. She knew what babies looked like when they were curious, when they were happy, when they were alive. This baby looked like none of those things. This baby looked lost. She walked slowly into the room, trying not to make noise. She picked up the scattered toys and placed them in the basket, keeping her eyes on Noah the entire time. He didn't react to her presence. He didn't turn his head. He didn't make a sound. "Hello, little one," Grace whispered. Nothing. She knelt down beside the playmat, close enough to touch him, but not quite daring to. "I'm Grace. I'm going to be working here for a while. I know you can't see me, but maybe you can hear me." Still nothing. Grace sat back on her heels and studied his face. His eyes were open, but they were empty. Not just unfocused. Empty. Like there was nothing behind them. But something about it bothered her. Something felt wrong. She couldn't explain it, but there was a nagging feeling in the back of her mind, like a word she couldn't quite remember. Footsteps approached from behind. "I told you not to interact with him." Grace jumped to her feet. Harold was standing in the doorway, his face colder than usual. "I was just talking to him," she said. "I didn't touch him. It doesn't matter. He can't hear you. He can't see you. He doesn't know you exist." Grace looked back at Noah. The baby hadn't moved. "How do you know?" she asked quietly. Harold's eyes narrowed. "What? How do you know he can't hear me? How do you know he doesn't know I'm here?" Harold stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Because the doctors tested him. Because the specialists confirmed it. Because his father has spent millions of dollars trying to reach him, and nothing has worked. The child is blind and unresponsive. That is the medical reality. Do not question it." Grace held his gaze. "I wasn't questioning anything. I was just asking." Harold stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away. "Finish your work," he called over his shoulder, "and stay away from the child." Grace waited until he was gone. Then she looked back at Noah. "Something's wrong with you," she whispered. "But I don't think it's what they say it is." She didn't know why she said it. She didn't know what made her so certain. But deep in her gut, she felt it. This baby was not what they claimed he was, and she was going to find out the truth. 3 days passed. Grace settled into a routine. She cleaned the east wing in the morning, organized the common areas in the afternoon, and ate her meals alone in the kitchen. She spoke to no one. She asked no questions. She stayed invisible. But every day she watched Noah. She watched him sit motionless on his playmat. She watched Harold administer the eye drops at 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock. She watched Marcus kneel beside his son, begging him to respond. "Come on, buddy," Marcus would say, waving toys in front of Noah's face. "Look at me, just once, please." But Noah never responded. He just sat there staring at nothing, trapped in a world no one could reach. Grace wanted to say something. She wanted to tell Marcus that something felt wrong, but she was just a maid. She had no medical training. She had no right to question the doctors, so she kept quiet and kept watching. On the 4th morning, everything changed. Grace was eating breakfast in the kitchen when Harold walked in. "Turner, the nurse called in sick. You will bathe the child today." Grace looked up sharply. "Me? But you said I shouldn't interact with him." "This is different. The child needs to be bathed. You will follow the procedure exactly as I describe it. Fill the basin with warm water. Add 3 drops of the baby soap. Wash him gently and quickly. Do not attempt to engage with him. Do not speak to him. Do not touch his face. Is that understood?" Grace's heart was pounding, but she nodded. "Yes." "Good. The bathing station is set up in the dining room. I will bring the child to you in 1 hour." He walked out without waiting for a response. Grace sat alone in the kitchen, her mind racing. She was going to bathe Noah. She was going to hold him in her arms. She was going to be closer to him than she had ever been. And suddenly she knew exactly what she was going to do. She was going to test him. An hour later, Grace stood in front of the bathing station. The round plastic basin was filled with warm, soapy water. Clean towels were stacked beside it. Everything was ready. Harold carried Noah into the room and placed him in Grace's arms. 20 minutes, he said. I will return to collect him. Grace nodded. Harold left. She was alone with the baby. Grace looked down at Noah's face. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. His body was limp in her arms. He didn't react to her touch. Okay, little one, she whispered. It's just you and me now. She lowered him into the warm water, slowly supporting his head with one hand. The water rose around his small body, and the soap created a thin layer of foam on the surface. Noah didn't react. Grace picked up the soft sponge and began washing his arms. She worked slowly, watching his face for any sign of response. Nothing. She moved the sponge to his chest, his shoulders, his neck. Still nothing. Grace took a deep breath. This was the moment. She dipped the sponge into the water and moved it toward his face. She wiped his forehead gently, letting some of the foam drift toward his eyes. Noah blinked. Grace's hand froze in midair. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Had she imagined it? Had she wanted to see a response so badly that she had invented one? She moved the sponge again, letting more foam drift near his other eye. Noah blinked again. Grace dropped the sponge into the water. Oh my God, she breathed. She moved her hand slowly in front of his face from left to right. Noah's eyes followed. Grace felt like the world had stopped spinning. His eyes had moved. They had tracked her hand, not smoothly, not clearly, but they had moved. Noah, she whispered, can you see me? His lips parted. A sound escaped his throat. Grace leaned closer, barely breathing. Mommy. The word hit Grace like a punch to the chest. Mommy. The word her own son had never lived long enough to say. Tears streamed down her face. She reached out and touched Noah's cheek. I'm here, she whispered. I'm right here. Noah's hand lifted slowly from the water. His tiny fingers reached for her face, trembling with the effort. And he touched her. Grace sobbed. This baby could see. This baby could hear. This baby was reaching for her, touching her, calling her mommy. Everything the doctors had said was a lie. Everything Harold had told her was wrong. This child was not blind, and someone in this house knew it. Grace finished the bath in a daze. Her hands were shaking as she dried Noah off and dressed him in clean clothes. Her mind was racing with questions she couldn't answer. How could the doctors be wrong? Why would anyone lie about a baby's blindness? What was really going on in this house? She needed proof. She needed evidence. She needed something concrete before she could tell anyone. She placed Noah back on his playmat and knelt beside him. I'm going to figure this out, she whispered. I promise you. I'm going to find out what they did to you. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Grace jumped to her feet and grabbed her cleaning supplies. Harold walked into the room, his eyes scanning everything. Is he clean? He asked. Yes, I followed the procedure exactly. Harold nodded. He walked to the side table and picked up a small bottle. Time for his drops. Grace watched as he approached Noah, tilted his head back, and squeezed 2 drops into each eye. Within seconds, something changed. Noah's body went limp. His eyes, which had shown the faintest hint of life, went dull and empty again. The spark that Grace had seen just minutes ago disappeared completely. Grace felt ice run through her veins. The drops. It was the drops. The medication wasn't helping Noah. It was destroying him. Harold capped the bottle and placed it back on the table. He's always calmer after the drops, he said almost to himself. Grace didn't respond. She was afraid that if she opened her mouth, she would scream. Harold left the room. Grace waited until his footsteps faded completely. Then she walked to the side table and picked up the bottle. Her hands were trembling as she studied the label. The text was faded and worn. The prescription was old. The expiration date had passed months ago. She squinted at the doctor's name, Dr. Richard Caldwell. Grace pulled out her phone and took a photo of the bottle. Then she placed it back exactly where Harold had left it. That night, she would search for information about this medication. She would find out what it really did. She would gather evidence, and then she would expose the truth. That evening, Grace sat in her room with her phone searching for answers. She typed in the medication name, struggling to read the faded label. After several attempts, she found a match. Opticare 7. She clicked on the first result and began reading. Opticare 7 was a prescription medication originally developed to treat patients with extreme light sensitivity. It worked by suppressing pupil response and reducing the eye's ability to detect brightness. Common side effects in infants included blurred vision, delayed visual development, and reduced responsiveness to visual stimuli. Grace felt sick. She scrolled further and found a news article from 18 months ago. Pediatric ophthalmologist loses license amid fraud investigation. She clicked on the article and read quickly. Dr. Richard Caldwell, a Beverly Hills ophthalmologist, had his medical license revoked following an investigation into fraudulent treatment practices. Multiple families filed complaints alleging that Caldwell prescribed unnecessary medications to infants, suppressing their vision to justify ongoing treatment fees. 3 families reached settlements. 2 cases were still pending. Caldwell denied all allegations, but surrendered his license rather than face a formal hearing. Grace stared at the screen, her hands shaking. The doctor who diagnosed Noah as blind had lost his license for fraud. The medication he prescribed was designed to suppress vision, not restore it. The drops were being administered twice daily by a butler who seemed more interested in following orders than caring for the child. This wasn't a medical mistake. This was deliberate. Someone was keeping Noah blind on purpose. Grace looked at the photograph she had taken of the medication bottle. She looked at the article about Dr. Caldwell. She looked at the notes she had written about Noah's reactions during the bath. She had evidence. She had proof. Now she just needed to tell the right person. But who could she trust? Marcus Sterling was Noah's father, but he believed his son was blind. He trusted the doctors. He trusted Harold. He had no idea what was really happening. If Grace told him the truth, would he believe her? Or would he think she was crazy? There was only one way to find out. Tomorrow, she would bathe Noah again. She would document every reaction. She would gather more evidence. And when she had enough, she would tell Marcus everything. Even if it meant losing her job. Even if it meant being thrown out on the street. She would not let another child be destroyed. Not this time. The next morning, Grace arrived at the bathing station early. She prepared everything herself: warm water, gentle soap, clean towels, and her phone hidden in her pocket, ready to record. When Harold brought Noah to her, she took the baby calmly. "I'll call you when he's finished," she said. Harold hesitated. I know the procedure. I'll follow it exactly." He studied her face for a moment, his eyes suspicious, but he nodded and left the room. Grace waited until his footsteps faded completely. Then she pulled out her phone and pressed record. "Noah Sterling, second observation," she said quietly. "Testing visual and auditory response." She lowered Noah into the warm water and began the bath. This time she was systematic. She moved her hand slowly in front of his face and watched his eyes follow. She let foam drift toward his eyes and watched him blink. She whispered his name and watched his head turn toward her voice. Every reaction she recorded. "Subject is tracking movement with both eyes," she narrated. "Blink reflex is present and consistent. Head turns in response to auditory stimuli." She moved a colorful toy in front of his face. His eyes followed. Visual tracking confirmed. Subject is responsive to color and motion. She touched his cheek. He reached for her hand. Tactile response confirmed. Subject is engaging with physical contact. She whispered his name again. "Mommy," Noah said. Grace stopped recording. Tears were streaming down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. She picked up Noah and held him against her chest, feeling his small heart beating against hers. "I've got you," she whispered. "I've got you, and I'm not going to let anyone hurt you anymore." She didn't know that someone was watching from the doorway. She didn't know that everything was about to change. Marcus Sterling stood frozen in the doorway. He had come downstairs to check on Noah. He did it every morning, even though it always ended the same way. The baby sitting still, the toys untouched, the silence that never broke. But this morning was different. This morning he saw his son move. He saw Noah's eyes track the maid's hand. He saw Noah blink when foam touched his face. He saw Noah reach for the maid's cheek, and he heard his son speak. "Mommy." The word hit Marcus like a physical blow. For 8 months he had believed his son was blind. For 8 months he had watched Noah sit motionless, unresponsive, trapped in darkness. For 8 months he had begged every god he could think of to give him a sign that his son was still in there. And now a maid was holding his baby, and his baby was looking at her. "What the hell is going on here?" Marcus demanded. Grace spun around, her face white with shock. "Mr. Sterling, I can explain." "Explain what?" Marcus strode into the room, his heart pounding. "What are you doing to my son?" "I'm not doing anything to him. I'm trying to help him." "Help him? The doctor said he's blind. They said he can't see anything." Grace took a deep breath. She knew this moment would come. She had rehearsed it 100 times in her head. "Mr. Sterling, I think someone has been lying to you." Marcus stopped walking. "What did you say?" "The eye drops. The ones Harold gives him twice a day. I looked them up. They're designed to suppress visual response. They're not helping Noah see, they're preventing it." Marcus stared at her, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and rage. "That's insane. Dr. Caldwell prescribed those drops. He's a respected ophthalmologist." Dr. Caldwell had his license revoked 18 months ago. Grace pulled out her phone and showed him the article. He was investigated for prescribing unnecessary medications to infants. Multiple families filed complaints. Marcus grabbed the phone and read the article, his hands trembling. "This can't be right," he whispered. "He came highly recommended. He treated Noah for months." "Look at your son, Mr. Sterling." Grace turned so Marcus could see Noah's face. "Look at him right now. His eyes are moving. He's tracking my hand. He's responding to my voice." Marcus looked at Noah. The baby's eyes were fixed on Grace's face, not staring blankly, not looking through her, looking at her. "That's impossible," Marcus breathed. "It's not impossible. It's real. Watch." Grace moved her hand slowly from left to right. Noah's eyes followed. Marcus made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. "Oh my God," he said. "Oh my God, he can see." "He's been seeing this whole time," Grace said, "but the drops suppress his response. Every time Harold gives them to him, he goes blank again. It's not natural, it's the medication." Marcus looked at the phone in his hand. He looked at his son. He looked at Grace. And then his face hardened into something dangerous. "Harold!" he shouted. "Get in here now!" Grace held Noah close, her heart racing. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. Harold appeared in the doorway, his face pale. "Sir, is something wrong?" Marcus walked toward him, his fists clenched at his sides. "You've been giving my son those drops every day for 8 months. You told me they were helping him." Harold's eyes flickered toward Grace, then back to Marcus. "They were prescribed by Dr. Caldwell. I was following medical orders." "Dr. Caldwell is a fraud." Marcus shoved the phone in Harold's face. "He lost his license. He was investigated for drugging children." Harold's composure cracked. Just for a second, just a tiny fracture, but Grace saw it. "Sir, I had no idea." "You're lying." Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You've been keeping my son blind on purpose." Harold took a step backward. "Mr. Sterling, please, get out." "Sir, get out of my house." Harold stared at Marcus for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out of the room without another word. Marcus stood in the middle of the room, breathing hard. His whole body was shaking. Grace walked toward him slowly, still holding Noah. "Mr. Sterling," she said softly, "we need to stop the drops. We need to call a real doctor. We need to find out how much damage has been done." Marcus looked at his son. Noah's eyes were still moving, still tracking, still alive. "He can see me," Marcus whispered. "After all this time, he can actually see me." He reached out and touched Noah's cheek. And for the first time in 8 months, Noah smiled at his father. Marcus broke down. He fell to his knees and sobbed, his whole body shaking with months of grief and fear and hope. Grace knelt beside him, holding Noah between them. "We're going to fix this," she said. "I promise you. We're going to fix this." Marcus looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. "Who are you?" he asked. "Why do you care so much about my son?" Grace hesitated. She thought about Daniel. She thought about the empty crib. She thought about all the nights she had spent crying herself to sleep. "I lost my own baby 6 months ago," she said quietly. "I couldn't save him, but I can save Noah, and I'm not going to stop until I do." Marcus stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Tell me everything," he said. "Everything you found, everything you saw. I want to know all of it." Grace took a deep breath and began to talk. Outside, Harold was already on the phone. "We have a problem," he said. "The maid found out. Sterling knows everything." There was a long pause on the other end. "Then we need to move quickly," the voice said, "before they contact the authorities." Harold looked back at the mansion, his face dark. "What do you want me to do?" "Whatever is necessary." The line went dead. Harold slipped the phone into his pocket and walked toward his car. The truth was out, but the fight was just beginning. Marcus sat in his office with Grace, the door locked, his phone pressed against his ear. It was 9:47 p.m., and he had been making calls for 3 hours straight. "Yes, I need an emergency consultation," he said. "Tonight if possible. My son has been misdiagnosed, and I believe he's been given medication that suppressed his vision." The voice on the other end asked questions. Marcus answered them quickly, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "His name is Noah Sterling. He's 8 months old. The prescribing doctor was Richard Caldwell. Yes, the one who lost his license." He listened for a moment, then nodded. "Tomorrow morning at 7. I'll be there." He hung up and looked at Grace. "Dr. Amanda Reyes. She's a pediatric ophthalmologist at UCLA Medical Center. She agreed to see Noah first thing tomorrow." Grace exhaled with relief. "That's good. That's really good." Marcus stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the night was dark and quiet. Harold's car was gone from the driveway. "I trusted him," Marcus said quietly. "Harold has worked for my family for 15 years. He was here when Elena died. He helped me through the worst days of my life, and the whole time he was poisoning my son." Grace didn't know what to say. She had only been here for a week. She didn't understand the history, the relationships, the betrayals that ran deeper than she could imagine. "Why would he do it?" she asked. "What did he have to gain?" Marcus turned to face her. "Money. It's always money. Caldwell was charging me $50,000 a month for Noah's treatment, private consultations, specialized medications, experimental therapies. None of it was real. But Harold was probably getting a cut, 10%, maybe 20. That's $6,000 to $12,000 a month for doing nothing but squeezing drops into my son's eyes." Grace felt sick. For 8 months. For 8 months. Marcus's voice cracked. $96,000. Maybe more. That's what my son's vision was worth to them. He slammed his fist against the wall. "I'm going to destroy them. Both of them. I'm going to make sure they never hurt another child again." Grace stood up and walked toward him. "Mr. Sterling, you need to focus on Noah right now. The investigation can wait. Your son needs you." Marcus looked at her, his eyes red with exhaustion and fury. "You're right," he said. "You're right. Noah comes first." He took a deep breath and tried to calm himself. "Where is he now?" "Rosa is watching him in the nursery. I asked her to stay with him until we figured out what to do." Marcus nodded. Good. Thank you. He paused, studying Grace's face. Why are you helping us? You could have stayed quiet. You could have pretended you didn't see anything. It would have been easier. Grace thought about Daniel. She thought about the night he died, the way she had held his lifeless body and screamed until her voice gave out. Because I know what it feels like to lose a child, she said, and I couldn't watch it happen to someone else, not when I could stop it. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Thank you, he said finally, for everything. Grace nodded. We should check on Noah, make sure he's okay. They walked together toward the nursery, not knowing that someone was watching the house from the shadows across the street. Harold sat in his car with the engine off his phone glowing in the darkness. He had received his orders. He knew what he had to do. But first he needed to make one more call. He dialed a number and waited. It's me, he said when the line connected. Sterling is taking the boy to see a new doctor tomorrow morning. UCLA Medical Center, 7 o'clock. The voice on the other end was sharp. That cannot happen. I know. That's why I'm calling. What do you suggest? Harold looked at the mansion, his face expressionless. An accident. Something that looks natural. The father is unstable. Everyone knows he hasn't been sleeping. If something happened to him on the way to the hospital... There was a long pause. Do it, but make sure there are no witnesses. What about the maid? What about her? She knows everything. She has evidence on her phone. Another pause. Then she needs to disappear too. Harold ended the call and started his car. Tomorrow morning everything would change, one way or another. The clock on the dashboard read 11:23 p.m. He had less than 8 hours to plan. Inside the mansion, Grace sat beside Noah's crib watching him sleep. The baby looked peaceful, his chest rising and falling with each breath. Without the drops, his face seemed different somehow, more alive, more present. Marcus stood in the doorway watching them both. He looks better already, he said quietly. Grace nodded. The medication was suppressing more than just his vision. It was suppressing everything. His responses, his emotions, his connection to the world. How did I miss it? Marcus asked, his voice heavy with guilt. How did I not see what was happening to my own son? You trusted the people around you. That's not a crime. But I should have questioned them. I should have asked more questions. I should have... You did what any father would do. You followed the experts. You believed the doctors. Marcus walked into the room and knelt beside the crib. Elena would have known, he said. She would have seen through Caldwell in a second. She always had good instincts about people. Grace watched him, her heart aching. Tell me about her, she said. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled just slightly. She was brilliant, smarter than me by a mile. She ran her own nonprofit helping underprivileged kids get access to education. She worked 16-hour days and never complained. He reached through the crib bars and touched Noah's hand. She wanted to be a mother more than anything. When she found out she was pregnant, she cried for an hour. Happy tears. She said it was the best day of her life. She sounds amazing. She was. Marcus's voice broke. And she never got to see her son grow up. She never got to hear him say his first word. She never got to watch him take his first steps. Grace felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She would be proud of you, she said, for fighting for him, for not giving up. Marcus looked at her. I gave up for 8 months. I accepted that he was blind. I stopped trying to reach him. But you didn't stop loving him. That's what matters. Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I need to make this right, he said. I need to give him the life Elena wanted for him. You will, starting tomorrow. They sat in silence for a while watching Noah sleep. Neither of them knew that tomorrow would bring more than just a doctor's appointment. It would bring a fight for their lives. At 5:30 a.m., Grace woke to the sound of her phone buzzing. She grabbed it from the nightstand and looked at the screen. It was a text message from an unknown number. Leave the mansion now. You're in danger. Grace sat up, her heart pounding. She stared at the message, trying to make sense of it. Who had sent it? How did they get her number? What kind of danger? She thought about ignoring it. It could be a prank. It could be someone trying to scare her, but something in her gut told her to take it seriously. She got out of bed and dressed quickly. Then she walked down the hall to Marcus's room and knocked on the door. No answer. She knocked again, harder. "Mr. Sterling, are you awake?" Still nothing. Grace tried the door handle. It was locked. "Mr. Sterling." She heard footsteps behind her and spun around. Rosa the cook was standing at the end of the hallway, her face pale. "He left an hour ago," Rosa said. "He said he needed to get to the hospital early." Grace felt ice run through her veins. "What? Why didn't he wake me?" "He said he didn't want to disturb you. He took Noah with him." Grace grabbed Rosa's arm. "Did anyone else leave with him?" Rosa shook her head. "No, he went alone." Grace pulled out her phone and dialed Marcus's number. It went straight to voicemail. She dialed again. Same result. "Something's wrong," she said. "Something's very wrong." She ran down the stairs, her mind racing. The warning text. Marcus leaving early. His phone going to voicemail. She burst through the front door and stopped dead. Harold's car was parked in the driveway. He was back. Grace ducked behind a pillar, her heart hammering in her chest. She watched as Harold stepped out of his car and walked toward the mansion. He was carrying something in his hand. Something small and dark. A gun. Grace pressed herself against the pillar, trying not to breathe. Harold walked past her without looking, his footsteps echoing on the stone pathway. He entered the mansion through the side door. Grace waited until he was inside. Then she sprinted to her car. She had to find Marcus. She had to warn him. She had to save Noah. She pulled out of the driveway and drove toward the hospital, praying she wasn't too late. At 6:15 a.m., Marcus pulled into the parking garage at UCLA Medical Center. Noah was in his car seat, still sleepy but alert. His eyes were moving, tracking the lights on the ceiling. "We're here, buddy," Marcus said softly. "We're going to see a real doctor. Someone who's going to help you." He got out of the car and walked around to unbuckle Noah's seat. That's when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned and saw a man walking toward him. Tall, wearing a dark jacket, his face hidden by shadows. "Mr. Sterling." Marcus tensed. "Who are you? My name doesn't matter. I was sent by Dr. Caldwell." Marcus's blood went cold. "Caldwell. He wants you to know that you're making a mistake. If you see this new doctor, if you tell her what you found, there will be consequences." Marcus stepped in front of Noah's car seat, shielding his son with his body. "Get away from us." The man smiled. "I'm not here to hurt you, Mr. Sterling. I'm here to offer you a deal. Walk away from this investigation. Tell the new doctor that you changed your mind, and we'll forget any of this ever happened. And if I don't," the man's smile faded, "then things will get very complicated. For you, for your son, for that maid who's been asking too many questions." Marcus felt rage boiling up inside him. "You're threatening my family. I'm giving you a choice, a chance to protect them." Marcus took a step forward, his fists clenched. "Here's my choice. You can tell Caldwell that I'm coming for him. I'm going to expose everything he did. I'm going to make sure he spends the rest of his life in prison. And if anyone touches my son or Grace, I will burn his entire world to the ground." The man's expression didn't change. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Sterling." "No, the mistake was trusting people like you." The man stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the parking garage. Marcus stood still, his whole body shaking. He looked down at Noah, who was staring up at him with wide eyes. "It's okay, buddy," Marcus whispered. "Daddy's going to protect you, I promise." He picked up Noah and held him close, scanning the parking garage for any other threats. Then he walked toward the hospital entrance as fast as he could. He didn't see the second man watching from a car across the garage, and he didn't see the gun pointed at his back. Grace arrived at the hospital at 6:38 a.m. She ran through the parking garage, searching for Marcus's car. She found it on the 3rd level, empty. "Please be inside," she whispered. "Please be safe." She ran to the hospital entrance and burst through the doors. The lobby was quiet, only a few people sitting in the waiting area. She ran to the front desk. "Marcus Sterling," she said, gasping for breath. Did he check in? He was supposed to see Dr. Amanda Reyes. The receptionist typed something into her computer. Yes, Mr. Sterling checked in about 20 minutes ago. He's in the pediatric ophthalmology wing, 3rd floor room 312. Grace didn't wait for more information. She ran to the elevators and pressed the button repeatedly until the doors opened. The ride to the 3rd floor felt like hours. When the doors opened, she sprinted down the hallway checking room numbers. 308, 310, 312. She burst through the door. Marcus was sitting in a chair holding Noah. A woman in a white coat, Dr. Reyes, was shining a small light into the baby's eyes. They all looked up when Grace entered. Grace. Marcus stood up, alarm crossing his face. What's wrong? Harold. Grace gasped. He's back at the mansion. He has a gun. I got a text saying we're in danger. Dr. Reyes stepped back, her face concerned. Should I call security? She asked. Marcus looked at Grace, then at Noah, then at the doctor. Yes, he said. Call security and call the police. Dr. Reyes nodded and left the room. Marcus pulled Grace aside. Tell me everything, from the beginning. Grace told him about the text message about Harold's car in the driveway, about the gun she had seen in his hand. She told him about her fear that someone was trying to stop them from reaching the hospital. Marcus's face went white. There was a man in the parking garage, he said. He said he was sent by Caldwell. He threatened us. He said there would be consequences if I talked to the doctor. Grace grabbed his arm. We need to leave. We need to get Noah somewhere safe. No. Marcus's voice was firm. We're not running. We're not hiding. We're going to finish the examination, get the medical records, and then we're going to the police with everything we have. But if they're willing to, I don't care what they're willing to do. I've spent 8 months watching my son trapped in darkness because I was too afraid to ask questions. I'm not afraid anymore. He looked down at Noah, who was watching them both with curious eyes. He can see me, Grace. For the first time in his life, my son can see me, and I'm not going to let anyone take that away. Grace stared at him, her heart pounding. Okay, she said finally. Then we fight. Dr. Reyes returned with 2 security guards. I've called the police, she said. They'll be here in 15 minutes. In the meantime, these officers will stay with you. Marcus nodded. Thank you. Can we continue the examination? Of course. Dr. Reyes picked up her instruments and walked back to Noah. Now, little one, she said softly, let's see what's really going on with those beautiful eyes. At 7:45 a.m., Dr. Reyes finished her examination. She sat down across from Marcus and Grace, her face serious but hopeful. I've completed a preliminary assessment, she said, and I can tell you with confidence that Noah is not blind. Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He has partial vision in both eyes. His corneas are healthy, his retinas are functioning, his optic nerves show normal activity. Then why didn't he respond for 8 months? Grace asked. Dr. Reyes picked up the medication bottle that Marcus had brought from home. This drug is called Opticare 7. It was originally developed to treat patients with extreme photosensitivity. But it has a significant side effect. It suppresses pupil response and reduces the brain's ability to process visual information. She looked at Marcus. In adults, the effects are temporary. The vision returns to normal within days of stopping the medication. But in infants whose visual systems are still developing, prolonged use can cause serious problems. What kind of problems? Marcus asked, his voice tight. Delayed visual development, reduced depth perception, difficulty tracking movement. In severe cases, permanent vision impairment. Grace felt her stomach drop. Is Noah going to be okay? Dr. Reyes paused before answering. The good news is that he's young. His brain is still plastic, still adaptable. With proper therapy and stimulation, there's a good chance he can develop normal vision. And the bad news is that we won't know the full extent of the damage for months, possibly years. He'll need regular checkups. He'll need specialized care. And he'll need parents who are patient and committed to his recovery. Marcus looked at Noah, who was playing with a colorful toy that Dr. Reyes had given him. Whatever it takes, he said. I'll do whatever it takes. Dr. Reyes smiled. I believe you will. She stood up and walked to her desk. I'm going to write up my findings and submit them to the medical board. What Dr. Caldwell did was criminal negligence. Combined with the evidence you've gathered, this should be enough to reopen the investigation against him. Thank you, Marcus said, for believing us. Thank you for fighting for your son. Not every parent would have. There was a knock on the door. One of the security guards poked his head in. Mr. Sterling, the police are here. Marcus looked at Grace. Are you ready? Grace nodded. Let's finish this. At 8:30 a.m., Marcus sat in a small conference room with two detectives from the LAPD. Detective Sarah Chen was in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. Her partner, Detective Michael Torres, was younger, quieter, taking notes in a small notebook. Let me make sure I understand, Chen said. You're alleging that your butler and your son's doctor conspired to keep your son blind for 8 months. That's exactly what I'm alleging. And you have evidence to support this. Marcus slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts of the medical records, the prescription for Opticare 7, the news article about Dr. Caldwell's revoked license, and photographs of the medication bottle. I also have video evidence, Grace said. She pulled out her phone and played the recording she had made during Noah's bath. This shows my son responding to visual stimuli just hours after missing a dose of the medication. He tracks movement. He blinks at light. He reaches for objects. Chen watched the video, her expression unreadable. And you say the butler threatened you this morning? Torres asked. Not Harold directly, Marcus said. A man in the parking garage. He said he was sent by Caldwell. He told me there would be consequences if I talked to the doctor. Chen leaned back in her chair. Mr. Sterling, I have to be honest with you. This is a serious allegation. Medical fraud conspiracy threatening a witness. If what you're saying is true, this goes beyond malpractice. I know. We'll need to interview Dr. Caldwell. We'll need to search Harold's residence. We'll need to do whatever you need to do. I'll cooperate fully. Chen looked at Torres, who nodded. Okay, she said. We're going to issue a warrant for Harold's arrest and bring Dr. Caldwell in for questioning. In the meantime, I'm going to assign a protective detail to your family. Thank you. Chen stood up and shook Marcus's hand. We'll be in touch. She walked out with Torres, leaving Marcus and Grace alone in the conference room. Marcus looked at Grace. It's really happening, he said. We're really doing this. Grace smiled for the first time all day. We're doing this. But their relief was short-lived. At 10:15 a.m., Marcus's phone rang. It was Rosa. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice trembling. You need to come home right away. What happened? It's Harold. He came back while the police were here. There was a confrontation. Her voice broke. Rosa, what happened? He set fire to your office, all your files, all your documents. Everything is burning. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Is anyone hurt? No, the fire department is here. But Mr. Sterling... What? He got away. Harold escaped. The police couldn't catch him. Marcus ended the call and looked at Grace. Harold burned my office. He destroyed the evidence. Grace's hand flew to her mouth. But we have copies. We have everything on my phone. We have the medication bottle. We have Dr. Reyes's report. That's not the point. Marcus's voice was hard. He's desperate. He knows we're coming for him, and desperate men do desperate things. He stood up and grabbed his keys. We need to get back to the mansion, now. They ran to the car Noah secured in Grace's arms. As they drove through the streets of Los Angeles, Marcus's mind was racing. Harold was out there somewhere. Caldwell was probably already planning his next move. The evidence was scattered across multiple locations. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. And somewhere in the city, Harold was watching the news on his phone, seeing the fire trucks in front of the Sterling mansion. He smiled. Let them think they had won. Let them think they were safe, because what he had planned next would make the fire look like nothing. He dialed a number. It's time, he said. Activate the backup plan. And the voice on the other end laughed. With pleasure. Marcus pulled into the driveway at 11:47 a.m. Fire trucks blocked the entrance. Police cars lined the street. Smoke still rose from the east side of the mansion where his office had been. He jumped out of the car before it fully stopped. Mr. Sterling! Detective Chen ran toward him. "You can't go in there yet. The fire marshal hasn't cleared the building." "Where is he?" Marcus demanded. "Where's Harold?" "We don't know. He fled on foot through the back garden. We have units searching the area." Grace got out of the car, holding Noah tightly against her chest. The baby's eyes were wide, watching the chaos around him. "This is my fault," Marcus said. "I should have had him arrested last night." "You didn't know he would do this." "I should have known." Marcus slammed his fist against the hood of his car. "I trusted him for 15 years. I let him into my home. I let him near my son." Rosa came running from the house, tears streaming down her face. "Mr. Sterling, I'm so sorry. I tried to stop him. I called the police as soon as I saw him, but he was too fast." Marcus grabbed her shoulders. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" "No, he pushed past me and went straight to your office. He had gasoline. He poured it everywhere and lit a match before anyone could stop him." Detective Torres approached with a phone in his hand. "Mr. Sterling, we found this in the garden. It belongs to Harold." Marcus took the phone and looked at the screen. There were dozens of text messages between Harold and an unknown number. He scrolled through them quickly, his face growing darker with each message. "They've been planning this for months," he said. "Look at this. Caldwell paid Harold $20,000 up front, another $10,000 every month." Grace leaned over to look. "That's over $100,000. And here," Marcus pointed to the message from 3 days ago. "Caldwell told him to increase the dosage. He said Noah was starting to show signs of response." "They knew," Grace whispered. "They knew the medication was wearing off." Detective Chen took the phone. "This is good evidence. Combined with what you already have, we can build a strong case against both of them." "I want Caldwell arrested today," Marcus said. "We're working on it. His lawyer claims he's out of the country, but we don't believe that. We've issued an alert at all airports and border crossings." Marcus looked at the smoking ruins of his office. Years of documents, records, memories all reduced to ash. "What about the fire? Did anything survive?" "The fire marshal is assessing the damage now. But Mr. Sterling, you should prepare yourself. It doesn't look good." At 1:15 p.m., the fire marshal gave the all-clear. Marcus walked through what remained of his office. The walls were blackened. The ceiling had partially collapsed. His desk was nothing but a charred skeleton, but it was the safe that caught his attention. "It's still intact," he said. The fire marshal nodded. "That's a commercial-grade fireproof safe. The contents should be protected." Marcus knelt down and entered the combination. His hands were shaking. Inside this safe were the original documents from Noah's diagnosis. The first prescriptions, the medical records that Caldwell had signed. The safe door swung open. Everything was there, untouched. Marcus pulled out the files and held them against his chest. "We've got him," he said. "We've got everything we need." Grace appeared in the doorway. "Marcus, you need to see this." He followed her to the living room where Detective Chen was standing with her phone pressed to her ear. Her face was grim. "Thank you. Keep me updated." She hung up and turned to Marcus. "We found Harold." "Where?" "At the bus station downtown. He was trying to board a bus to Mexico." Marcus felt a rush of relief. "You arrested him." Chen hesitated. "What is it?" Marcus asked. "What's wrong?" "He's not cooperating. He's refusing to talk without his lawyer. But he did say one thing." "What?" Chen's expression was troubled. "He said you should check your wife's accident report. He said Elena's death wasn't an accident." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He staggered backward, grabbing the wall for support. "What did you say?" "He claims that Elena's helicopter crash was sabotaged. He says Caldwell arranged it." Grace's hand flew to her mouth. Marcus couldn't breathe. The room was spinning around him. "That's impossible," he whispered. "Elena died in a mechanical failure. The investigation concluded it was an accident." "I know, but Harold is claiming he has proof. He says he'll only share it if we guarantee him immunity." Marcus's legs gave out. He sank to the floor, his back against the wall. Elena, his beautiful Elena, murdered. "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Why would Caldwell kill my wife?" Chen crouched down beside him. "We don't know yet, but we're going to find out." At 3:30 p.m., Marcus sat in an interrogation room at the police station. Harold was on the other side of the table, handcuffed, his lawyer beside him. Marcus had demanded to be present for the interview. The detectives had agreed as long as he stayed silent. "My client is willing to provide information about the helicopter crash," the lawyer said, "in exchange for full immunity from prosecution." Detective Chen shook her head. "No immunity. Your client participated in a conspiracy to harm a child. The best we can offer is a reduced sentence in exchange for cooperation." "That's not acceptable." "Then we're done here." Chen stood up. "Wait." Harold's voice was hoarse. "I'll talk." His lawyer grabbed his arm. "Harold, I advise against. I don't care anymore." Harold looked at Marcus, his eyes hollow. "I've been carrying this for 2 years. I can't do it anymore." Chen sat back down. "Start from the beginning." Harold took a deep breath. "It started before Noah was born. Dr. Caldwell approached me about 6 months after Mrs. Sterling got pregnant. He said he had a proposition." Marcus leaned forward, every muscle in his body tense. He knew the Sterlings were wealthy. He knew they would do anything for their child. He said if the baby had a medical condition, something serious, something that required ongoing treatment, it would be worth millions. So he planned to fake a diagnosis from the start. Harold nodded. He already had a contact at the hospital where Mrs. Sterling was scheduled to deliver. They were going to claim the baby had a vision problem during the initial screening. "But Elena would have noticed," Marcus said, breaking his silence. "She would have questioned the diagnosis." Harold's face darkened. "That's why she had to go." The room went silent. Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. Elena started asking questions about Noah's treatment. She didn't believe the diagnosis. She wanted to get a second opinion. "She told me she was worried," Marcus whispered. "She said something felt wrong. I told her to trust the doctors." Caldwell knew she would eventually figure it out, so he made a phone call, and 2 weeks later, she was dead. Marcus lunged across the table. "You son of a—" Torres and Chen grabbed him, pulling him back. "Mr. Sterling, you need to calm down." "He killed my wife. He killed Elena." Harold didn't flinch. "I didn't kill her. Caldwell did. I just didn't stop it." Marcus was shaking with rage. You knew she was going to die and you did nothing." "I was scared. Caldwell had connections. He said if I talked, he would destroy me. He said he would make sure I went to prison for the rest of my life." "So you let her die?" "You let my wife die to protect yourself." Harold lowered his head. "I know, and I have to live with that every day." At 5:45 p.m., Detective Chen found Marcus in the hallway outside the interrogation room. He was sitting on a bench, his head in his hands. "Mr. Sterling." He didn't look up. "We have enough to arrest Caldwell for murder. Harold is going to testify against him. Combined with the evidence about Noah's treatment, Caldwell is looking at life in prison." Marcus finally raised his head. His eyes were red. "It won't bring her back." "No, it won't. But it will make sure he can never hurt anyone else." Marcus stood up slowly. "What happens now?" "We've located Caldwell. He was hiding at a private residence in Malibu. We're sending a team to arrest him now." "I want to be there." Chen hesitated. "That's not standard procedure." "I don't care about procedure. That man killed my wife and tortured my son. I need to see him in handcuffs." Chen looked at him for a long moment. "Okay, but you stay in the car. You don't approach him. You don't speak to him. Understood?" Marcus nodded. At 7:15 p.m., a convoy of police vehicles pulled up to a beachfront mansion in Malibu. Marcus sat in the back of Detective Chen's car, watching as officers surrounded the property. "Richard Caldwell!" Chen shouted through a megaphone. "This is the LAPD. Come out with your hands up." Silence. "We have a warrant for your arrest. You have 30 seconds to comply." Still nothing. Chen signaled to the tactical team. They moved toward the front door. Marcus watched his heart pounding. The team breached the door and rushed inside. Seconds felt like hours. Then Chen's radio crackled. "We have him. Suspect is in custody." Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. The front door opened and officers emerged with Caldwell between them. He was wearing a silk robe and slippers, his silver hair disheveled. When he saw Marcus in the police car, he smiled. That smile made Marcus's blood boil. "You think this is funny?" Marcus shouted through the window. Caldwell didn't respond. He just kept smiling as the officers led him to a waiting patrol car. Chen walked over to Marcus. "It's done. He's in custody." "Why was he smiling?" Chen frowned. "I don't know, but don't let it get to you. He's just trying to intimidate you." "It's not intimidation. He knows something we don't." Chen's radio crackled again. "Detective, we have a situation inside the house. You need to see this." Chen looked at Marcus. "Stay here." She jogged toward the mansion and disappeared inside. Marcus waited, his anxiety growing with each passing minute. 10 minutes later, Chen emerged. Her face was pale. She walked to the car and opened Marcus's door. "What is it?" he asked. "What did you find?" Chen took a deep breath. Caldwell kept records, detailed records. He documented everything he did to Noah. The dosages, the effects, the symptoms. "That's good, right? More evidence." Chen shook her head slowly. "There's more. He didn't just document Noah's case, he documented others." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Others. 12 other children. Going back almost a decade. He did the same thing to all of them. Fake diagnoses, suppressive medications, ongoing treatment for conditions that didn't exist. Marcus staggered out of the car. 12 children. Some of them recovered when the treatment stopped, but others... Chen's voice cracked. Others suffered permanent damage. Marcus leaned against the car, his legs weak. How is this possible? How did no one notice? He targeted wealthy families, families who could afford the best care, the most expensive treatments, families who trusted doctors without question. "Like me." Chen nodded. "Like you." At 9:30 p.m., Marcus returned to the mansion. Grace was waiting for him in the foyer, Noah asleep in her arms. "I saw the news," she said. "They arrested Caldwell." Marcus nodded. He couldn't speak. Grace saw the look on his face. "What happened? What did they find?" Marcus walked past her into the living room. He sank into a chair and stared at the wall. "Elena was murdered." Grace's face went white. "What?" "Caldwell arranged the helicopter crash. Harold knew about it. They killed her because she was asking questions about Noah's treatment." Grace sat down across from him, tears filling her eyes. "Oh, Marcus, I'm so sorry." "For 2 years I thought it was an accident. I blamed myself for letting her get on that helicopter. I blamed God for taking her from me." He looked at Grace, his eyes hollow. "But it wasn't an accident. It wasn't fate. It was murder. And I trusted the man who did it." Noah stirred in Grace's arms, making soft sounds. Marcus looked at his son. "And Noah wasn't the only one. Caldwell did this to 12 other children. Some of them are permanently damaged." Grace held Noah tighter. "At least it's over now. Caldwell is in jail. Harold is going to testify. They can't hurt anyone anymore." Marcus shook his head. "It's not over. The trial hasn't even started. Caldwell has money connections, the best lawyers. He's going to fight this. But the evidence can be challenged. Witnesses can be discredited. I've seen it happen before. Rich men buy their way out of justice." Grace leaned forward. "Then we make sure that doesn't happen. We go public. We contact the other families. We make this story so big that no judge can look the other way." Marcus looked at her. "You would do that? You would put yourself in the spotlight?" "I already am. I testified to the police. My name is in the reports. I might as well use that to help the other children." Marcus felt something shift inside him, not hope exactly, but determination. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it." The next morning, at 6:00 a.m., Marcus called a press conference. Reporters packed into the lobby of a downtown hotel. Cameras flashed. Microphones were thrust forward. Marcus stood at the podium, Grace beside him, Noah in her arms. 2 days ago, I discovered that my son was not blind. For 8 months, he was given medication that suppressed his vision. This medication was prescribed by Dr. Richard Caldwell, a man I trusted with my child's life. The room erupted with questions. Marcus raised his hand for silence. "Yesterday I learned something even more devastating. My wife, Elena Sterling, was murdered. Her helicopter crash was not an accident. It was sabotage arranged by the same doctor who was torturing my son." Gasps filled the room. But the most horrifying discovery is this. My family was not the only victim. Dr. Caldwell has been doing this for almost a decade. 12 other children suffered the same fate as my son. Some of them will never fully recover. Marcus looked directly into the cameras. "I am standing here today to send a message to the other families who may have been victims, to the medical community that failed to stop this monster, and to Dr. Caldwell himself." He paused. "You will not escape justice. I will spend every dollar I have, every ounce of energy I possess, to make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison. You took my wife from me. You tried to take my son, but you failed, and now I'm coming for you." The room exploded with questions, but Marcus didn't answer any of them. He took Grace's hand, and together they walked out of the hotel. At 11:30 a.m., the phone calls started coming. First one family, then two, then five. Parents who had seen the press conference, parents who recognized Caldwell's name, parents whose children had been diagnosed with mysterious conditions that never seemed to improve. By noon, Marcus had spoken to 8 families. By evening, the number had risen to 17. "They're all saying the same thing," Grace told him. "Their children were diagnosed by Caldwell. They were given medications that made things worse. When they questioned the treatment, they were told to trust the process." Marcus was overwhelmed. How did he get away with this for so long? Because people trust doctors. Because when a man in a white coat tells you your child is sick, you believe him. Marcus thought about all the times he had sat in Caldwell's office, listening to explanations he didn't understand, signing consent forms he didn't read. "I was so stupid." "You weren't stupid. You were a grieving father trying to help your son. Caldwell took advantage of that." The doorbell rang. Rosa answered it and returned a moment later with a strange expression. "Mr. Sterling, there's someone here to see you. She says her name is Margaret Chen. She says her daughter was one of Caldwell's patients." Marcus stood up. "Send her in." Then a woman in her 60s walked into the room. She was thin and frail with gray hair and trembling hands. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice shaking, "thank you for seeing me." "Please sit down. Can I get you anything?" "No. I just need to tell you something. Something I should have said years ago." Marcus sat across from her. "What is it?" Margaret took a deep breath. "My daughter was Caldwell's first victim. 15 years ago, he diagnosed her with a rare degenerative eye disease. He said she would be completely blind by age 12. What happened to her?" Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "She died. She was 9 years old. The medications he gave her, they didn't just suppress her vision. They damaged her brain. She had seizures, memory loss, personality changes. And then one night, she went to sleep and never woke up." Grace covered her mouth with her hand. "I tried to sue him," Margaret continued. "I tried to hold him accountable, but his lawyers buried me. They said my daughter's death was caused by her underlying condition, not the medication. They painted me as a grieving mother looking for someone to blame." "I'm so sorry," Marcus said. "I gave up. I couldn't fight anymore. I lost my husband, my home, everything. And I watched Caldwell continue his practice, continue hurting children while I had nothing." She looked at Marcus with desperate eyes. "But when I saw your press conference this morning, I knew I had to come forward. I have documents, medical records, evidence that proves what he did to my daughter. I've kept them hidden for 15 years, waiting for someone brave enough to use them." She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick folder. "Please, Mr. Sterling, make him pay for what he did. Not just for your son, for all of them. For my little girl." Marcus took the folder with trembling hands. "I will," he said. "I promise you, I will." At 10:00 p.m., Marcus sat alone in his study, surrounded by documents. The folder Margaret had given him was explosive. It contained internal communications from Caldwell's practice, emails discussing how to maximize revenue from wealthy patients, memos about which medications caused the most profitable long-term dependency, and most damning of all, a list of every child Caldwell had treated over the past 15 years. There were 43 names on the list, 43 children whose lives had been destroyed by one man's greed. Marcus's phone buzzed. It was Detective Chen. "Mr. Sterling, I have an update." "What is it?" "Caldwell's lawyer just filed a motion for bail. The hearing is tomorrow morning." Marcus felt his blood run cold. Bail. After everything he did. His lawyer is arguing that Caldwell is not a flight risk, that he's a respected member of the medical community with deep ties to Los Angeles. "That's insane. He murdered my wife. He tortured children." "I know. The DA is opposing the motion, but I wanted you to be prepared. If the judge grants bail, Caldwell could be out by tomorrow afternoon." Marcus hung up the phone and stared at the wall. Tomorrow, the man who killed his wife might walk free. He couldn't let that happen. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "This is Marcus Sterling. I need to speak to every major news outlet in the country. Tonight." By midnight, Marcus had given interviews to CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and 3 major newspapers. He told them everything. About Noah, about Elena, about the 43 children on Caldwell's list. By morning, the story was everywhere. And when Caldwell's bail hearing began at 9:00 a.m., the courthouse was surrounded by protesters. Families holding signs with their children's names, reporters shouting questions, cameras capturing every moment. Marcus stood at the front of the crowd watching the doors. This was just the beginning. But one way or another, he was going to make sure Caldwell never hurt another child again, even if it cost him everything. The courthouse doors opened at 9:17 a.m. Marcus pushed through the crowd, Detective Chen at his side. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed in his face. Protesters chanted behind him. "Mr. Sterling, do you believe Caldwell will get bail? Mr. Sterling, have you spoken to the other families? Mr. Sterling, what will you do if he walks free today?" Marcus didn't answer. He kept his eyes forward and walked through the metal detectors into the building. The courtroom was packed. Every seat was filled. People stood along the walls. The energy was electric, dangerous. Marcus took his seat in the front row behind the prosecution table. Grace was already there, holding Noah in her arms. The baby's eyes moved around the room, taking in the faces, the lights, the movement. "How is he?" Marcus asked. "He's been fussy all morning. I think he senses something." Marcus reached out and touched his son's hand. Noah's fingers wrapped around his. "It's okay, buddy. Daddy's here." The side door opened and Caldwell was led in by 2 officers. The room went silent. Caldwell was wearing an expensive suit. His silver hair was perfectly combed. He walked with his head held high, as if he was arriving at a business meeting instead of a murder hearing. When he passed Marcus's row, he glanced over and smiled. That same smile from the night of his arrest. That same arrogant, knowing smile. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. "All rise," the bailiff called. "The Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison presiding." Everyone stood as the judge entered and took her seat. "Be seated." The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Sarah Williams, stood immediately. "Your Honor, the people oppose bail in the strongest possible terms. The defendant is charged with first-degree murder conspiracy to commit murder, child endangerment, and fraud. He poses an extreme flight risk and a danger to the community." Caldwell's lawyer, a silver-tongued man named David Preston, rose with practiced calm. "Your Honor, my client is a respected physician with 40 years of service to this community. He has no prior criminal record. He has deep roots in Los Angeles, including property, family, and professional connections. He is not a flight risk." "Not a flight risk," Williams shot back. "We found him hiding in a beach house in Malibu after fleeing his primary residence. We found evidence that he was arranging transportation to a country with no extradition treaty." "Allegations," Preston said smoothly. "Unproven allegations." Judge Morrison raised her hand. "Counsel, I've reviewed the charges and the evidence. This is an extraordinary case." She turned to look at Caldwell. "Dr. Caldwell, you are accused of some of the most disturbing crimes I have seen in my 30 years on the bench. The murder of a young mother, the deliberate harm of children, including infants, the systematic exploitation of grieving families." Caldwell's smile faded slightly. "However," the judge continued, "I must also consider the presumption of innocence. The defendant has not yet been convicted of any crime. Marcus felt his heart stop. Therefore, I am setting bail at $50 million. The defendant must surrender his passport, wear an ankle monitor, and remain within Los Angeles County. He may not have any contact with any of the alleged victims or their families. The courtroom erupted. Protesters screamed. Families sobbed. Reporters typed furiously on their phones. Marcus sat frozen, unable to believe what he had just heard. $50 million was nothing to Caldwell. He would be out by noon. Grace grabbed his arm. "Marcus, we have to go, now." She pulled him toward the exit as chaos consumed the courtroom. Outside, the crowd was even more frenzied. "He got bail," someone shouted. "The murderer got bail." Marcus pushed through the mob, his mind racing. This couldn't be happening. After everything they had uncovered, after all the evidence, after 43 children and a murdered wife, Caldwell was going to walk free. At 11:45 a.m., Marcus received a call from Sarah Williams. "I know you're upset," she said. "I'm upset too. But this isn't over." "How is this not over?" "He's going to be out in a few hours." "Out on bail isn't the same as free. He still has to stand trial, and we have 6 months to build the strongest case possible." 6 months he could disappear in 6 minutes. That's why we have the ankle monitor. That's why we have surveillance on him 24 hours a day. If he so much as steps outside his property line, we'll know. Marcus took a deep breath. "What do you need from me?" "Everything. Every document. Every record. Every piece of evidence you've collected. I need to interview the other families. I need to depose Harold. I need to build a case so airtight that no jury in the world could let him walk. You'll have it, all of it. Good. And Marcus, yes. Stay away from Caldwell. Don't contact him. Don't go near his property. If you do anything that could be construed as witness intimidation or harassment, his lawyers will use it to destroy our case." Marcus clenched his jaw. "I understand." He hung up and looked at Grace. 6 months, he said. "We have 6 months to make sure he never sees daylight again." Grace nodded. "Then we better get to work." At 2:30 p.m., Caldwell posted bail and walked out of the detention center. He was greeted by his lawyer and a private security team. They ushered him into a black SUV and drove away before the media could swarm. Marcus watched the footage on his phone, his blood boiling. "He looks like he's going on vacation," he muttered. Grace was sitting across from him, feeding Noah a bottle. "Don't let him get to you. That's what he wants." "How can I not let him get to me? He killed my wife. He tortured my son, and now he's sitting in his mansion drinking champagne while we wait for a trial that might not even convict him." Noah made a happy sound, reaching for the bottle with both hands. Marcus looked at his son. "Hey, buddy, you're getting stronger every day, aren't you?" Noah's eyes met his, clear, focused, aware. It had been 2 weeks since they stopped the medication. Every day, Noah showed more progress. He tracked movement across the room. He recognized faces. He laughed when Grace made funny sounds. Dr. Reyes had said his recovery was remarkable. "His brain is adapting faster than we expected," she had told them at the last appointment. "With continued therapy, there's every reason to believe he'll develop normal vision." Marcus held on to that hope like a lifeline. Whatever happened with the trial, whatever Caldwell did next, Noah was getting better. That was the only thing that mattered. At 5:15 p.m., Detective Chen called with news. "We found something in Harold's apartment," she said. "A backup drive. It contains copies of all his communications with Caldwell going back 3 years. Marcus sat up straight. "What's on it?" "Everything. Emails discussing the medication scheme, text messages about Elena's helicopter, financial records showing the payments Harold received." "That's incredible. There's more. Harold kept voice recordings of some of his phone calls with Caldwell, including one from the day before your wife's death." Marcus's heart stopped. "What does it say?" Chen paused. "I think you should hear it for yourself. Can you come to the station?" At 6:30 p.m., Marcus sat in a small conference room at the LAPD headquarters. Detective Chen placed a laptop on the table and pressed play. Harold's voice came through the speakers first. Are you sure about this? If something goes wrong? Then Caldwell's voice, calm and measured. Nothing will go wrong. The mechanic has been paid. He'll make a small adjustment to the tail rotor. By the time anyone realizes there's a problem, it will be too late. But she's pregnant. Was pregnant. What about the baby? The baby is the whole point. Once Elena is out of the picture, Sterling will be desperate. He'll believe anything I tell him. He'll pay anything I ask. Harold hesitated. This is murder. If we get caught... We won't get caught. Helicopter crashes happen all the time. The investigation will conclude it was mechanical failure. No one will suspect a thing. There was a long pause. Fine, Harold said finally, but I want double my usual payment. Done. After the funeral, we wait a few months. Then I diagnose the baby with congenital blindness. Sterling will be so grief-stricken he'll never question it. The recording ended. Marcus couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. He had just heard his wife's murder being planned, discussed like a business transaction, calculated and cold. I'm sorry, Chen said quietly. I know this is difficult. Marcus looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. He killed her for money. He took her away from me so he could steal my money. Yes. And I trusted him. For 2 years, I trusted him. Chen reached across the table and touched his hand. You didn't know. There was no way you could have known. Marcus wiped his eyes and took a shaky breath. I want this recording played at the trial. I want every person in that courtroom to hear what kind of monster Richard Caldwell really is. It will be. Sarah Williams has already included it in her evidence list. Marcus nodded. Good. Then let's make sure he never sees the outside of a prison cell again. The next 3 months were a blur of depositions, interviews, and legal preparations. Marcus threw himself into the case with an intensity that worried everyone around him. He worked 18-hour days reviewing documents, coordinating with the other families, giving interviews to any media outlet that would listen. Grace tried to slow him down. You're going to burn out, she told him one night at 11:30 p.m. You need to sleep. I'll sleep when he's convicted. And what about Noah? He needs his father. Marcus looked up from his laptop. Grace was standing in the doorway, Noah asleep in her arms. He said a new word today, she said. Do you know what it was? Marcus felt a pang of guilt. What? Dada. He looked right at me and said, Dada. He was looking for you. Marcus closed the laptop and walked over to them. He touched Noah's cheek. The baby stirred slightly, but didn't wake. I'm sorry, Marcus said. I'm trying to protect him. I'm trying to make sure Caldwell can never hurt him again. I know, but you can't protect him if you're not here. He needs you present, not just fighting battles in courtrooms. Marcus took Noah from her arms and held him close. You're right. You're absolutely right. He looked at Grace, really looked at her for the first time in weeks. She had dark circles under her eyes. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She had been carrying so much of the burden while he obsessed over the trial. Thank you, he said, for everything you've done. For Noah. For me. Grace smiled tiredly. We're a team, remember? Yeah, we are. He reached out and took her hand. I don't know what I would have done without you. Grace squeezed his hand. You would have figured it out. You're stronger than you think. Marcus shook his head. No. I was broken when you came here. I had given up on everything. You brought me back. You brought us both back. They stood together, Noah sleeping between them, and for a moment the world felt almost peaceful. The trial began on a Monday morning in October. The courtroom was even more crowded than the bail hearing. Media from around the world had descended on Los Angeles. The case had become international news. Marcus sat in the front row with Grace and Noah. The other families filled the rows behind them. Margaret Chen was there clutching a photograph of her daughter. 17 other parents who had lost children to Caldwell's greed. Prosecutor Sarah Williams stood and delivered her opening statement at 9:15 a.m. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are about to hear a story that will shock you. a story of greed, betrayal, and unspeakable cruelty. A doctor who took an oath to heal instead chose to destroy. For over a decade, Richard Caldwell preyed on the most vulnerable members of our society, children, and the families who loved them. She walked slowly in front of the jury box. The evidence will show that Dr. Caldwell deliberately misdiagnosed dozens of children with conditions they did not have. He prescribed medications that harmed them instead of helping them. He charged their families millions of dollars for treatments that were designed to fail. She paused. And when one mother, Elena Sterling, began asking questions when she threatened to expose his scheme, Richard Caldwell had her killed. Gasps filled the courtroom. We will present recordings of the defendant planning her murder. We will present testimony from his co-conspirator who has agreed to tell the truth about what happened. We will present medical evidence showing exactly what was done to the children in his care. Williams turned to face Caldwell directly. By the end of this trial, you will have no doubt that Richard Caldwell is guilty of murder conspiracy and the systematic abuse of children. We ask that you hold him accountable for his crimes. She returned to her seat. Defense attorney David Preston stood and buttoned his jacket. Ladies and gentlemen, you have just heard a very dramatic story, a story designed to make you angry, a story designed to make you want to punish someone, anyone, for the tragedies these families have experienced. He spread his hands. But a story is not evidence. Emotions are not facts. And my client, Dr. Richard Caldwell, is not the monster the prosecution wants you to believe he is. He walked toward the jury. The truth is much simpler. Dr. Caldwell is a dedicated physician who spent 40 years helping children. He made difficult diagnoses based on the best available medical knowledge. He prescribed treatments that were standard practice at the time. Preston pointed at Harold, who sat in the witness waiting area. The prosecution's star witness is a confessed criminal who has been promised a reduced sentence in exchange for his testimony. He will say anything to save himself. He turned back to the jury. By the end of this trial, you will see that there is reasonable doubt about every single charge against my client, and when there is reasonable doubt, you must acquit. Thank you. The trial continued for 3 weeks. Witness after witness took the stand. Parents described their children's suffering. Medical experts explained how the medications worked. Financial analysts traced the money from families to Caldwell's offshore accounts. And then on day 15, Harold took the stand. He walked to the witness box, slowly avoiding eye contact with everyone in the room. He had lost weight since his arrest. His face was pale and drawn. "State your name for the record," Williams said. "Harold James Mitchell." "Mr. Mitchell, how long did you work for the Sterling family?" 15 years. "And during that time, what was your relationship with Dr. Richard Caldwell?" Harold took a breath. "He paid me to help him, to give the medication to Noah, to report on what was happening in the household, to make sure no one discovered the truth." "And what was the truth?" Harold looked at Marcus for the first time. "That Noah Sterling was never blind. That Dr. Caldwell created a fake diagnosis to steal money from the family. That when Elena Sterling started asking questions, Caldwell decided she had to die." The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. "Order, I will have order in this court." The noise subsided. Williams continued. "Mr. Mitchell, did you have direct knowledge of the plan to kill Elena Sterling?" "Yes." "Please describe what you knew." Harold's voice shook. "Caldwell called me about 2 weeks before the crash. He said Elena was becoming a problem. She had scheduled an appointment with another doctor for a second opinion on Noah's diagnosis. If she went to that appointment, everything would fall apart." "What did he propose?" "He said he knew a mechanic who worked on helicopters. He said for the right price, the man would make a small adjustment that would cause a failure during flight." "And what did you say?" Harold closed his eyes. "I said I didn't want any part of it. I said this was going too far." "But you didn't stop him." "No, I didn't." "Why not?" Harold opened his eyes. Tears were streaming down his face. "Because I was scared. Caldwell said if I talked, he would make sure I went to prison. He said he had evidence that would implicate me in everything. I believed him." Williams played the recording that Marcus had heard at the police station. The courtroom listened in horrified silence as Caldwell's voice calmly discussed murder. When the recording ended, Williams turned to the jury. No further questions. Preston approached for cross-examination. Mr. Mitchell, isn't it true that you're testifying today in exchange for a reduced sentence? Yes. And isn't it true that you would say anything to avoid spending the rest of your life in prison? Harold shook his head. No. I'm telling the truth because I can't carry this anymore. I watched that baby every day for 8 months. I watched him sit there, blind, unresponsive, cut off from the world. And I knew it was my fault. I knew I was helping to destroy him. His voice cracked. I deserve to go to prison. I know that. But Caldwell deserves it more. He's the one who planned all of this. He's the one who killed Mrs. Sterling. I was just a coward who went along with it. Preston had no more questions. The final day of testimony came on a Friday afternoon at 2:00 p.m. Williams called her last witness, Marcus Sterling. Marcus walked to the witness stand, his heart pounding. He had been waiting for this moment for months. Mr. Sterling, Williams said, can you describe your relationship with your wife, Elena? Marcus took a breath. She was everything to me. We met in college. We built a life together. When she got pregnant with Noah, we thought all our dreams had come true. How did you feel when you learned she had died? Marcus's voice broke. Like the world had ended. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't function. The only thing that kept me going was Noah. And how did you feel when you learned your son was blind? Devastated. I felt like I had lost both of them. Elena was gone, and Noah was trapped in a world I couldn't reach. What did you do? Everything I could. I hired specialists. I tried experimental treatments. I spent millions of dollars trying to help him, but nothing worked. He just sat there day after day, not responding to anything. Williams nodded. And when did you learn the truth? Marcus looked at Grace, who was sitting in the front row with Noah. When Grace came into our lives, she was hired as a housekeeper. She had no medical training, no special qualifications, but she noticed something that all the experts had missed. What did she notice? That my son could see. During a bath, Noah blinked when foam touched his face. He tracked her hand with his eyes. He said his first word. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. For 8 months I thought my son was lost. And then this woman, this stranger, gave him back to me. Williams let the moment settle. Mr. Sterling, what do you want from this trial? Marcus turned to face the jury. I want justice. For my wife who was murdered because she loved her son too much to stay quiet. For Noah, who lost the first 8 months of his life because a doctor cared more about money than healing. For all the other children who suffered because Richard Caldwell saw them as nothing more than revenue. He pointed at Caldwell. That man took everything from me. He took my wife. He tried to take my son, and he would have gotten away with it if one person hadn't paid attention. Marcus's voice hardened. I want him to spend the rest of his life in prison. I want him to wake up every morning knowing that he will never see the outside world again. I want him to feel even a fraction of the helplessness that Noah felt trapped in darkness with no hope of escape. He turned back to the jury. Please, give us justice. Closing arguments took place on Monday morning. Williams delivered a powerful summation of the evidence, the recordings, the financial records, the testimony of Harold and the medical experts, the stories of 43 children whose lives had been destroyed. Richard Caldwell is not just a bad doctor, she concluded. He is a predator. He targeted vulnerable families and exploited their love for their children. He killed without remorse. He harmed without conscience. He must be held accountable. Preston gave his own closing, attacking the credibility of the witnesses, questioning the chain of evidence, suggesting that Harold was lying to save himself. But even he seemed to know it was hopeless. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. At 4:47 p.m., the foreman announced they had reached a verdict. Marcus held Grace's hand as the jury filed back into the courtroom. Noah was in his lap, playing with a small toy. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Morrison asked. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Elena Sterling, how do you find him guilty? Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find guilty? On the charges of child endangerment, how do you find guilty on all counts? On the charges of fraud, how do you find guilty on all counts? The courtroom erupted in cheers and sobs. Marcus pulled Grace and Noah into his arms, holding them tight. It was over. After everything they had been through, justice had finally been served. Caldwell was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, his face blank with shock. As he passed Marcus's row, he stopped. "This isn't over," he hissed. "I have appeals. I have lawyers. I'll be out in 5 years." Marcus looked at him calmly. "No, you won't, because I'm going to make sure every single day of your sentence is served. I'm going to be at every parole hearing. I'm going to remind them of what you did until you take your last breath in a prison cell." He held up Noah. "And my son is going to grow up healthy and happy and free, while you rot." Caldwell's face twisted with rage. The officers pulled him away. Marcus watched him go, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders that he had carried for 2 years. Elena's killer was going to prison. Noah was healing. And for the first time since that helicopter crashed, Marcus felt something he thought he had lost forever: hope. 6 months had passed since the verdict. Marcus stood at the window of his rebuilt office, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. The fire damage had been repaired. The documents had been restored from backups. The mansion, once a tomb of grief, now echoed with sounds he never thought he would hear again. Laughter, babbling, life. "Dada." Marcus turned around. Noah was crawling across the floor toward him, his small hands slapping against the hardwood with determined energy. His eyes were bright and focused, tracking his father's face with perfect clarity. "Hey, buddy." Marcus crouched down and opened his arms. "Come here." Noah crawled faster, giggling as he reached his father. Marcus scooped him up and held him high above his head. "Look at you getting so strong," Noah squealed with delight. Grace appeared in the doorway, a coffee mug in each hand. "He woke up at 5:30 demanding to see you," she said. "I told him Daddy was working, but he wasn't having it." Marcus took one of the mugs and kissed Grace on the cheek. "Thank you, for the coffee and for everything else." Grace smiled. "It's my job." "No, it's not. Not anymore." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "What's this?" Grace asked. "Open it." Grace set down her mug and opened the envelope. Inside were official documents, legal papers with signatures and seals. Her hands began to shake as she read. "Marcus, this is adoption papers. I've been working with my lawyers for months. If you sign those, you become Noah's legal guardian, co-parent, family." Grace looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Noah needs a mother, and you've been that for him since the day you walked into this house." Grace looked at Noah, who was reaching for her with grabby hands. "Mama," he said clearly. "Mama." Grace burst into sobs. She had never expected to hear that word again. After Daniel died, she thought that part of her life was over forever. She thought she would never hold a child who called her mother, but here was Noah, arms outstretched, calling her name. She took him from Marcus and held him tight against her chest. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll sign. Yes to everything." Marcus wrapped his arms around both of them. For the first time in 2 years, he felt whole. At 10:00 a.m., Detective Chen called with an update. "The sentencing hearing is scheduled for next week," she said. "The prosecution is asking for life without parole." Marcus was sitting in the living room watching Grace play with Noah on the floor. She was holding up colored blocks, and Noah was identifying each one. "Blue," he said, pointing at a blue block. "That's right." Grace clapped. "What about this one? Red, good job." Marcus smiled at them, then returned to the phone call. "What are the chances Caldwell gets the maximum?" "Very good. Judge Morrison was not happy with him during the trial. The evidence was overwhelming, and the victim impact statements from the other families were devastating." "I want to give a statement," Marcus said, "at the sentencing." "That can be arranged. I'll talk to the DA." "Thank you, Detective, for everything you've done. It's my job. But I have to admit, this case has been personal for me, too. My niece was diagnosed with a vision problem 2 years ago. Seeing what Caldwell did to those children, It hits different when you have kids in your life. Marcus understood completely. "Take care of your niece," he said. "Hold her close. You never know when everything can change." At 2:30 p.m., an unexpected visitor arrived at the mansion. Rosa came to find Marcus in his office. "Mr. Sterling, there's a woman here to see you. She says her name is Margaret Chen. She says it's urgent." Marcus went downstairs immediately. Margaret was waiting in the foyer, clutching a newspaper in her trembling hands. "Mr. Sterling, have you seen this?" She thrust the newspaper toward him. Marcus took it and read the headline. "Caldwell's lawyers file appeal. Claim evidence was illegally obtained. His blood ran cold. What is this? His lawyers are arguing that the recording Harold made was obtained without consent. They're saying it should be thrown out. If the appeal succeeds, the entire case could be reopened." Marcus felt the floor shift beneath his feet. That's impossible. Harold was a participant in the conversation. He had every right to record it. "I know, but they're claiming he was acting as a government agent, that the police told him to make the recording as part of a sting operation." "That's a lie." "Of course it's a lie, but lies can win appeals. You know that." Marcus sat down heavily on the nearest chair, just when he thought it was over, just when he thought they were finally free. Caldwell was still fighting. Grace came in Noah on her hip. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Marcus handed her the newspaper. Grace read it quickly, her face growing pale. "Can they actually do this?" "They can try," Margaret said. "They probably won't succeed, but the appeal process could take years. And during that time, Caldwell remains in prison, but the families remain in limbo." Marcus stood up abruptly. "No, I'm not going to let this drag on for years. I'm not going to let him torture us from behind bars." He pulled out his phone and called Sarah Williams. "Sarah, it's Marcus Sterling. I just saw the news about the appeal." "I was about to call you. Don't panic. Their argument is weak. Harold wasn't acting on police instructions when he made that recording. He made it to protect himself." "But they could still drag this out. They could try. But here's the thing, we have so much evidence beyond that recording. The financial records, the testimony of the other families, the medical reports. Even if the recording gets thrown out, the rest of the case is solid." Marcus took a breath. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. This is a Hail Mary pass from desperate lawyers. It's not going to work." "What can I do?" "Nothing. Stay calm. Focus on your family. Let me handle the legal side." Marcus hung up and looked at Margaret. "She says the appeal won't succeed." Margaret's expression was uncertain. "I hope she's right, but I've been fighting Caldwell for 15 years. He always finds a way." Grace stepped forward. "Then we'll fight back. We have 43 families. We have media attention. We have public support. If Caldwell thinks he can win this appeal, we'll make sure the whole world knows what he's trying to do." Margaret looked at her with something like admiration. "You remind me of myself when I was younger, before he broke me." Grace took her hand. "He didn't break you. You're still here. You're still fighting. That's not broken. That's brave." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." At 5 Hujru p.m., Marcus called an emergency meeting of all the families. 17 parents gathered in his living room, either in person or via video call. Margaret sat in the front row. "Doctor." Reyes joined remotely to provide medical perspective. Marcus stood before them, Noah in his arms. "You've all seen the news," he said. "Caldwell's lawyers are trying to appeal the conviction. They want to throw out key evidence and drag this case through the courts for years." Murmurs of anger filled the room. "I'm not going to let that happen. Sarah Williams believes the appeal will fail, but we can't take any chances. We need to make sure the public stays engaged. We need to keep pressure on the courts. We need to show Caldwell that we won't back down." A father named Thomas raised his hand. "What do you propose?" "A coordinated media campaign. We go on every talk show, every news program, every podcast that will have us. We tell our stories. We show the world what Caldwell did to our children. We make it impossible for any judge to let him walk free." A mother named Jennifer spoke up. "My daughter still has nightmares. I don't know if I can put her through more publicity." Marcus nodded. "I understand. No one has to participate who doesn't want to, but for those who are willing, we need to stand together. We're stronger as a group than we are alone." Margaret stood up. "I'll do it. I've been silent for 15 years. I'm not going to be silent anymore." One by one, the other parents voiced their support. By the end of the meeting, they had a plan. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of interviews and appearances. Marcus gave his first television interview on a Monday morning at 7:15 a.m. The host asked him about Elena, about Noah, about the years of suffering he had endured. Marcus told the truth, all of it, without holding back. "My wife was murdered because she asked questions," he said. "My son was kept blind because a doctor wanted to steal my money, and now that same doctor is trying to escape justice through legal technicalities." He looked directly into the camera. "I'm asking everyone who is watching to pay attention, to follow this case, to demand justice, not just for my family, but for all the families who have suffered." The interview went viral. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed over 10 million times. Grace did her own interview the following day. She spoke about finding Noah, about the bath that changed everything, about the moment she realized the baby could see. "Everyone had given up on him," she said. "The doctors, the specialists, even his own father for a while. But I saw something they didn't. I saw a little boy fighting to connect with the world, and I refused to look away." The host asked her about her own loss. Grace hesitated. "I lost my son 6 months before I came to the Sterling house. His name was Daniel. He was 3 months old when he died." Her voice cracked. "Coming to that mansion was supposed to be an escape, a way to hide from my grief. Instead, I found a child who needed me, and in saving him, I think I saved myself." The interview aired during prime time. Social media exploded with support. Hashtags like #JusticeForNoah and #StopCaldwell trended for days. Politicians began speaking out, calling for reforms in medical oversight. Medical associations issued statements condemning Caldwell's actions. The pressure was building. And then 2 weeks before the scheduled appeal hearing, something unexpected happened. At 9:30 a.m. on a Wednesday, Sarah Williams called Marcus with news. "The appeal has been withdrawn." Marcus almost dropped the phone. "What? Caldwell's lawyers just filed papers withdrawing the appeal. They're not going forward with it." "Why? What happened?" Williams paused. "Caldwell had a stroke last night in prison. He's in the hospital now." Marcus felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, anger, something that might have been satisfaction. Is he going to survive? The doctors aren't sure. But even if he does, his lawyers say he's no longer mentally competent to pursue the appeal. The conviction stands. Marcus sat down slowly. "It's really over." "It's really over. He's never getting out of prison. One way or another, justice has been served." Marcus hung up and went to find Grace. She was in the nursery reading to Noah. "What's wrong?" she asked when she saw his face. "The appeal is withdrawn. Caldwell had a stroke." Grace's eyes widened. "Is he dead?" "Not yet. But it doesn't matter. The conviction stands. He's never getting out." Grace set down the book and walked to him. "How do you feel?" Marcus thought about it. "I don't know. I thought I would feel happy or relieved, but I just feel empty." Grace took his hand. "You've been fighting for so long. It's going to take time to adjust to peace." Marcus looked at Noah, who was playing with the pages of the book. "He'll never know his mother," he said quietly. "No matter what happens to Caldwell, that won't change." "No, but he'll know about her. You'll tell him stories. You'll show him pictures. You'll keep her memory alive." Marcus nodded. "And he'll know you, the woman who saved his life." Grace smiled through tears. "We saved each other." 3 months later, an invitation arrived at the mansion. It was from the National Children's Foundation, an organization that celebrated children who had overcome extraordinary challenges. Noah Sterling had been selected to receive a special recognition at their annual ceremony. Marcus read the letter twice. "They want to honor him," he said to Grace. "They say his story has inspired thousands of families." Grace looked at Noah, who was stacking blocks on the floor. "He's just a baby. He doesn't even understand what happened to him." "Maybe not, but he will someday. and this will be part of his story. The ceremony was held in a conference center in Washington, D.C. Marcus, Grace, and Noah flew out the day before. They stayed in a hotel near the National Mall. Marcus took Noah to see the monuments, carrying him from place to place, telling him about history and heroes. "This is the Lincoln Memorial," he said. "Lincoln freed the slaves. He was one of the greatest presidents we ever had." Noah pointed at the statue. "Big," he said. Marcus laughed. "Yes, buddy, very big." The ceremony began at 6:00 p.m. The conference room was filled with families, children of all ages who had overcome incredible obstacles. Some were in wheelchairs, some had visible scars, some looked completely healthy, but had fought invisible battles. Marcus and Grace sat in the front row with Noah. The host, a woman named Patricia Wallace, took the stage. "Welcome to the 15th Annual Courage Awards. Tonight we celebrate children who have shown extraordinary bravery in the face of adversity." She introduced the first honorees one by one. A 7-year-old girl who had survived cancer. A 10-year-old boy who had learned to walk again after a car accident. A 12-year-old girl who had overcome a rare genetic disorder. Each story was more moving than the last. Then Patricia looked toward Marcus's row. "Our final honoree tonight is very special. He's the youngest child we've ever recognized. At just 18 months old, Noah Sterling has already overcome more than most people face in a lifetime." A video began playing on the screen behind her. It showed photos from the mansion The Bath, where Grace first noticed Noah's response, the hospital where Dr. Reyes confirmed he could see the courtroom where Caldwell was convicted. Then came clips from the news coverage, Marcus's interview, Grace's interview, the protests outside the courthouse. "Noah was the victim of a terrible crime," Patricia continued, "but he survived because one person refused to give up on him. One person saw what no one else could see." She turned to look at Grace. "Tonight, we're not just honoring Noah, we're also honoring the woman who saved him. Grace Turner, would you please join me on stage?" Grace looked at Marcus in shock. "Did you know about this?" Marcus smiled. "Go, you deserve this." Grace stood up slowly, her legs shaking. She walked to the stage, Noah reaching for her from Marcus's arms. Patricia placed a medal around Grace's neck. "This award is called the Guardian of the Light. It's given to individuals who bring hope to children in darkness. Grace, you saw a blind baby and refused to believe he was lost. You fought for him when everyone else had given up. You gave him back his sight, not just physically, but emotionally." Grace couldn't speak. Tears were streaming down her face. Patricia handed her the microphone. "Would you like to say a few words?" Grace wiped her eyes and looked out at the audience. "I don't really know what to say. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm not anyone special. I was just a woman who was running away from her own grief." She paused. "When I came to the Sterling house, I thought I was there to clean floors and wash dishes. I didn't expect to find a family. I didn't expect to find a child who needed me." She looked at Marcus, who was holding Noah. "But sometimes life gives you exactly what you need even when you're not looking for it. Noah gave me a reason to keep going. He gave me hope when I had none left." She turned back to the audience. "To all the parents here tonight, don't give up on your children. Even when the doctors say there's nothing to be done. Even when the specialists have given up. Even when you feel like you're fighting alone. Keep looking. Keep hoping. Keep believing." She lifted her medal. "Because sometimes miracles happen, and sometimes they happen to people like us." The audience rose to their feet, applauding. Marcus carried Noah to the stage. The baby reached for Grace immediately. "Mama!" he said, his voice ringing through the microphone. The crowd erupted in cheers and tears. Grace took Noah and held him close, his small arms wrapped around her neck. Marcus put his arm around them both. "We're a family," he said into the microphone. "Not by blood, but by something stronger. By love, by sacrifice, by the choice to keep fighting even when everything seemed hopeless." He looked at the audience. Noah's story isn't just about what was done to him, it's about what we did in response. We chose to seek the truth. We chose to demand justice. We chose to protect each other. He lifted Noah's small hand. This little boy can see now. He can laugh. He can play. He can call me Dada and Grace Mama. And that's not because of medicine or money or power. It's because one person paid attention when everyone else looked away. Marcus turned to Grace. You saved my son. You saved me. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know how grateful I am. Grace leaned her head against his shoulder. I already know, she whispered. After the ceremony, Marcus and Grace walked outside into the cool Washington evening. Noah was asleep in Grace's arms, exhausted from all the excitement. They stopped near a fountain, the water glittering under the streetlights. What happens now? Grace asked. Marcus thought about it. We go home. We raise our son. We build a life together. That's it. That's everything. That's more than I ever thought I would have again. Grace looked up at him. I never thought I would have this either. After Daniel died, I thought my life was over. I thought I would never love anyone again. And now, Grace smiled, now I have a family, a real family. It's different from what I imagined, but it's better, because we chose each other. Marcus leaned down and kissed her gently. I love you, he said. I should have told you that a long time ago. I love you too. I think I have since the day we stood over that bathtub together and watched Noah open his eyes. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other, the sleeping baby between them. Then Grace asked one more question. Do you think Elena would approve of us being together? Marcus was quiet. He thought about Elena, her laugh, her warmth, the way she always knew exactly what to say. Yes, he said finally. I think she would be happy that Noah has a mother, and I think she would be grateful that someone was there to take care of us when she couldn't be. Grace nodded. I hope so. I never met her, but I feel like I know her. Through you. Through Noah. She's part of our family now, even though she's gone. Always. They walked back to the hotel, the city quiet around them. 1 year later, Noah Sterling turned 2 years old. The party was small, just family and close friends. Rosa made a cake. Dr. Reyes stopped by with a gift. Detective Chen sent flowers. Noah sat in a high chair, chocolate frosting smeared across his face, laughing as Grace tried to wipe it off. Hold still, she said, laughing herself. No, Noah shouted gleefully. No clean. Marcus watched them from across the room, his heart full. Margaret Chen was there too. She had become a regular part of their lives, visiting, often sharing meals, telling stories about her own daughter. She would have been 25 this year, Margaret said quietly to Marcus. I think she would have liked Noah. I'm sure she would have, and I'm sure she's proud of you, for fighting for so long, for never giving up. Margaret smiled. I learned something from you, you know, from you and Grace. What's that? That it's never too late to find family, even when you've lost everything. Marcus put his arm around her. You're part of our family now. You know that, right? Margaret nodded, tears in her eyes. I know, and I'm grateful, more than you can imagine. Later that evening, after the guests had gone and Noah was asleep, Marcus and Grace sat together in the living room. The fire crackled softly. The house was quiet. I've been thinking, Grace said, about everything that happened, how we got here, how much has changed. Marcus took her hand. A lot has changed. I walked into this house 18 months ago with nothing. No hope, no future, no reason to keep living. And now, Grace looked at the photographs on the mantel. Noah as a newborn, Elena smiling in the sunshine, Marcus and Grace at the award ceremony, their new family portrait taken just last month. Now I have everything, more than I ever dreamed of. She turned to face Marcus. I want to have another baby. Marcus's breath caught. What? I know it's soon. I know we're still figuring things out. But I want to give Noah a sibling. I want to build on what we have. I want to fill this house with life. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Are you sure? After everything you went through with Daniel? Grace nodded. I was afraid for a long time. Afraid that if I loved another child, I would lose them too. But Noah taught me something. Love is always a risk, but it's worth it. Every time. Marcus pulled her close. Then yes, let's have another baby. Let's build a family that Caldwell could never have imagined. Let's prove that love wins. Grace kissed him. Love wins, she repeated. Upstairs, Noah stirred in his sleep. He was dreaming his small face peaceful, his eyes moving beneath closed lids. He didn't know about the darkness that had surrounded his first months of life. He didn't know about the drops that had stolen his vision. He didn't know about the trial, the appeals, the fight for justice. All he knew was that he was loved. He knew his father's voice deep and reassuring. He knew his mother's arms warm and safe. He knew that when he called out in the night, someone would always come. And that was enough. That was everything. Dr. Richard Caldwell died in prison 3 months later. He never regained consciousness after his stroke. He never faced his victims again. He never had the chance to apologize, to explain, to justify what he had done. Marcus received the news on a Tuesday morning. He didn't feel triumph. He didn't feel satisfaction. He felt nothing. Because Caldwell's death didn't bring Elena back. It didn't restore the years Noah had lost. It didn't heal the wounds of 43 families. All it did was close a chapter and open a new one. Marcus walked to the garden where Grace was planting flowers with Noah. The little boy was digging in the dirt, his hands covered in mud, laughing at something only he could see. "The flowers go in the hole," Grace was saying. "Then we cover them with dirt so they can grow." "Grow," Noah repeated, patting the earth enthusiastically. Marcus knelt beside them. "Caldwell is dead," he said quietly. Grace looked at him. "How do you feel?" Marcus watched his son healthy and happy, completely unaware of the man who had tried to destroy him. "Free," he said. "I feel free." Grace took his hand. "Then it's really over." "It's really over." Noah looked up at his parents, his face covered in dirt, his eyes bright with joy. "Dada mama. Look." He held up a flower slightly crushed, but still beautiful. "For you," he said proudly. Marcus and Grace looked at each other and laughed. "Thank you, buddy," Marcus said, taking the flower. "It's perfect." He tucked it behind Grace's ear. "For you," he said. Grace smiled. "I love you." "I love you too." Noah clapped his muddy hands. "Love," he shouted. "Love." And there in the garden, surrounded by flowers and dirt and sunshine, the Sterling family began again. Not broken by the past, but built stronger because of it. Because that's what families do. They survive, they heal, they grow, and they love no matter what. Everyone believed the billionaire's baby was born blind. The doctors confirmed it, the specialists gave up, and even his own father lost hope. But then a new maid was hired. She had no medical training. She wasn't part of any team. She was just there to clean and help around the house. What she noticed changed everything. One small moment during a simple bath revealed a truth that no one else had seen. And from that day forward, nothing was ever the same again. Because sometimes heroes don't wear capes or carry badges. Sometimes they carry mops and dustpans. Sometimes they're the people everyone overlooks. And sometimes all it takes to save a life is one person who refuses to look away. Grace Turner was that person. And Noah Sterling was proof that love, when it's brave enough to see the truth, can conquer anything. Even blindness, even betrayal, even death. This is their story, and it ends not with darkness but with light.